You walk into that important meeting, presentation, or conversation, and your heart starts racing before you even open your mouth. Your palms sweat, your voice wavers, and you watch others command the room with confidence while you struggle too. Speak up, knowing your nervousness is sabotaging your best opportunities. I am Dale Carnegie, and I spent decades studying why some people radiate unshakable confidence while others crumble under pressure. Through my research with thousands of individuals, I discovered that nervousness isn't a permanent character flaw. It's a learned response that can be completely transformed. What I'm about to share will revolutionize how you show up in any situation, giving you the tools to project confidence even when you don't feel it. The principles that helped millions overcome their fears can work for you too, whether you're facing a boardroom or a first date. But first, like this video, subscribe for more life-changing insights, and comment below where you're watching from. I want to see how far this confidence revolution needs to spread. Let me take you back to a crude wooden platform in rural Missouri, where a gangly farm boy stood frozen in terror before a handful of neighbors. That boy was me, and that simple stage would become the foundation that changed my entire understanding of human potential. I grew up on a farm where speaking up meant trouble, and keeping quiet meant survival. My father was a stern man who believed children should be seen and not heard. Every family gathering, every school recitation, every moment that required me to speak in front of others sent waves of panic through my skinny frame. I would lie awake nights before any speaking obligation, my stomach churning with dread. The worst moment came when I was 14. Our local school was hosting a debate competition, and somehow I'd been selected to represent our district. I practiced my speech 1,000 times in the barn, speaking to the cows and chickens who couldn't judge me. But when I climbed onto that weathered wooden platform and saw those expectant faces staring back at me, everything I'd prepared vanished from my mind. My voice cracked on the first word. My hands shook so violently I couldn't hold my notes. Sweat poured down my face despite the cool evening air. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air, before finally running off that stage in complete humiliation. That night, lying in my bed, I made a decision that would shape the rest of my life. I refused to let fear control me anymore. I didn't know how I was going to overcome this terror, but I knew I had to try. The pain of staying the same had finally become greater than the pain of changing. I began by speaking to my reflection in the old mirror in our barn. Then I graduated to speaking to the animals, imagining they were people. I joined every speaking opportunity I could find, even when my voice trembled and my knees knocked together. Each small step built upon the last. The transformation wasn't instant or magical. There were many more moments of failure, embarrassment, and doubt. But gradually, through deliberate practice and sheer determination, I began to discover something remarkable. Confidence wasn't something you were born with or without. It was something you could build, brick by brick, speech by speech, conversation by conversation. Years later, when I stood before thousands of people, teaching them the very principles I'd learned through my own struggle, I would often think back to that terrified farm boy on the wooden platform. He had no idea that his greatest weakness would become his greatest strength, and that his personal battle with fear would eventually help millions of others win their own battles with nervousness. Asterisk. After years of studying human behavior and working with thousands of individuals, I've come to understand nervousness in a way that most people never do. Picture, if you will, an ornate Victorian mirror that reflects not your physical appearance, but your deepest fears and insecurities. This mirror of truth shows us exactly what nervousness really is. Nervousness isn't a character defect or a sign of weakness. It's actually your body's ancient alarm system working exactly as it was designed to work, but in situations where it's no longer needed. When our ancestors faced a saber-toothed tiger, that surge of adrenaline, that heightened awareness, that fight or flight response, literally saved their lives. Your nervous system hasn't evolved much since then. The problem is that your brain can't tell the difference between a saber-toothed tiger and a boardroom presentation. Both trigger the same primitive response. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense, and your mind goes into survival mode. But instead of helping you run from a predator, these responses make you stumble over words and forget your carefully planned points. I've observed that nervousness has 3 distinct components, and understanding each one is crucial to overcoming them. First, there's the physical component, the sweating, trembling, rapid heartbeat, and shallow breathing. These are automatic responses that happen without your conscious control, but they can be managed once you understand them. Second, there's the mental component, the racing thoughts, the catastrophic predictions, the endless what-if scenarios that play in your mind like a broken record. Your imagination runs wild with visions of failure, embarrassment, and rejection. I've seen people create elaborate disaster scenarios in their minds that have absolutely no basis in reality. Third, there's the behavioral component, the avoidance, the stammering, the fidgeting, and the retreat. These are the actions you take in response to the physical and mental symptoms, and they often make the situation worse by confirming your fears and reinforcing the pattern. What fascinates me most is how nervousness feeds on itself. The more nervous you feel, the more nervous you become about being nervous. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. I've watched perfectly capable individuals become paralyzed by this vicious cycle, but here's what changed everything for me. I realized that nervousness and excitement are virtually identical in your body. The same physiological responses that create nervousness can be channeled into dynamic energy and enthusiasm. The difference isn't in what your body is doing, it's in how your mind interprets what's happening. When I finally understood this, I stopped trying to eliminate nervousness and started learning how to reframe it. Instead of seeing those butterflies in my stomach as a sign of impending doom, I began to interpret them as my body preparing me for peak performance. Instead of viewing my racing heart as panic, I recognized it as my system getting ready to do something important. This shift in understanding is the foundation of everything else I'll teach you. Nervousness isn't your enemy, it's simply energy that needs to be properly directed. Asterisk, asterisk. There's a beautiful theater mask I keep in my study one that appears supremely confident on the outside, while revealing vulnerability on the inside. This artifact perfectly captures what I call the confidence paradox, and understanding it will revolutionize how you approach nervousness. Most people believe that confident individuals never feel nervous, and this belief keeps them trapped in a cycle of self-defeat. They think confidence means the complete absence of fear or anxiety. So when they feel nervous, they conclude they're not confident people. This couldn't be further from the truth. I've had the privilege of working with some of the most successful business leaders, performers, and public speakers of our time. Without exception, every single one of them still experiences nervousness before important moments. The difference isn't that they don't feel nervous, it's that they've learned to act confidently despite feeling nervous. Let me share something that might surprise you. Some of the most compelling speakers I know are the ones who feel the most nervous beforehand. There's something about that nervous energy, when properly channeled, that creates an electric connection with the audience. The speakers who claim they never feel nervous often come across as flat and disconnected. The secret lies in what I call acting as if. This isn't about being fake or putting on a false persona. It's about understanding that confidence is a behavior, not a feeling. You can choose to behave confidently even when you don't feel confident internally. Over time, This behavior actually rewires your brain and begins to create the feelings to match. I learned this lesson during my early days of teaching. I would stand in front of a classroom, my knees practically knocking together, my voice wanting to quiver, but I would force myself to stand tall, speak clearly, and move with purpose. To the students, I appeared completely confident. What they couldn't see was the internal storm I was managing. The fascinating thing is that the more I acted confident, the more confident I actually became. It wasn't instant, but gradually, the gap between my internal experience and my external behavior began to narrow. The acting became authentic, but it started with a conscious choice to behave differently than I felt. This is why I tell people to focus on their actions rather than their feelings. You can't directly control how nervous you feel, but you absolutely can control how you stand, how you speak, how you breathe, and how you move. When you consistently choose confident behaviors, your feelings eventually follow suit. I've seen this work with thousands of people. The shy accountant who learned to speak up in meetings by forcing himself to ask one question per session. The nervous salesperson who made herself shake hands firmly despite her trembling palms. The anxious presenter who trained himself to make eye contact even when his instinct was to look away. Each of these individuals discovered that confidence isn't something you wait to feel, it's something you decide to do. They stopped waiting for nervousness to disappear and started acting with confidence in spite of it. This simple shift in approach changed everything for them, just as it had for me. The paradox is complete. The path to genuine confidence runs directly through the willingness to act confidently while feeling nervous. **** in my office, I keep a framed set of architect's blueprints from a building I helped design years ago. These detailed plans remind me daily of the most powerful weapon against nervousness: thorough preparation. Just as no architect would begin construction without precise blueprints, no confident person should enter an important situation without proper preparation. I can say with absolute certainty that preparation eliminates 90% of nervousness, not reduces, eliminates. When you know your material inside and out, when you've anticipated every possible question or challenge, when you've rehearsed your responses until they're second nature, there's simply very little left to be nervous about. But here's where most people go wrong. They confuse preparation with perfectionism. I've seen individuals prepare so extensively that they actually increase their anxiety rather than decrease it. They over-research, over-practice, and overthink until they're more nervous than when they started. This isn't preparation, it's paralysis. Smart preparation has a specific structure, and I've refined this system through decades of teaching and personal experience. First, you must know your core message or objective so clearly that you could explain it to a child. If you can't distill your main point into one simple sentence, you're not prepared, you're confused. Second, you need to understand your audience or situation better than they understand themselves. Who will be there? What are their concerns, interests, and motivations? What outcome do they want? When you can answer these questions thoroughly, you can tailor your approach to serve their needs, which automatically makes you more confident, because you're focused on helping rather than impressing. Third, you must have your opening and closing memorized perfectly. I don't mean word-for-word memorization, that sounds robotic. But you should know exactly how you'll begin and exactly how you'll end. These are the moments when nervousness typically peaks, so having them locked down gives you tremendous confidence. Fourth, prepare for the unexpected. What if the technology fails? What if someone asks a hostile question? What if you're given less time than planned? I always prepare 3 versions of every presentation: a short version, a medium version, and a long version. This flexibility eliminates the panic that comes from rigid planning. My personal preparation ritual has evolved over the years, but the core elements remain the same. I begin by writing out my key points on paper, typing, but writing by hand. There's something about the physical act of writing that helps embed the information in your mind more deeply. Then I practice out loud. Always out loud. You can't discover the awkward phrases, the difficult transitions, or the timing issues by reviewing silently in your head. I speak my content to the mirror, to my family, to anyone who will listen. Each time I refine and improve, I also visualize the environment where I'll be speaking or performing. I research the room, the setup, the acoustics, if possible. When I walk into that space, it should feel familiar, not foreign. Unfamiliarity breeds nervousness. Familiarity breeds confidence. Finally, I prepare emotionally. I remind myself why this moment matters, not just to me but to the people I'm serving. When your preparation is grounded in a genuine desire to help others rather than a desperate need to impress them, your nervousness transforms into enthusiasm. The beautiful truth about preparation is that it creates a positive feedback loop. The more prepared you are, the more confident you feel. The more confident you feel, the better you perform. The better you perform, the more you want to prepare thoroughly for the next opportunity. Preparation becomes your pathway to consistent confidence. Asterisk, asterisk, I want you to imagine a grand theater that exists only in your mind, a place where you can rehearse any performance perfectly, where every interaction goes exactly as you envision it, where you can practice confidence until it becomes as natural as breathing. This theater of the mind has been my secret weapon for decades, and it can be yours too. Mental rehearsal isn't just positive thinking or wishful hoping. It's a systematic process that literally rewires your brain for success. When you vividly imagine yourself performing confidently, your nervous system can't tell the difference between the imagined experience and reality. You're actually training your body to respond with confidence when the real moment arrives. I discovered this technique during my early struggles with public speaking. Before every presentation, I would close my eyes and walk through the entire experience in my mind. I would see myself entering the room with purpose, connecting with the audience, delivering my message with clarity and conviction, and receiving positive responses. The more detailed and realistic I made these mental rehearsals, the more my actual performance improved. The key is specificity. Vague visualizations produce vague results. Instead of just imagining doing well, I learned to rehearse every detail, the feeling of my feet on the floor as I walked to the front of the room, the sound of my voice projecting clearly to the back row, the facial expressions of engaged listeners, even the temperature of the room and the texture of my clothing. I also learned to rehearse challenges and how I would handle them confidently. What if someone asked a difficult question? In my mental theater, I would see myself pausing thoughtfully, acknowledging the question with respect, and providing a thoughtful response. What if I forgot a key point? I would visualize myself gracefully transitioning back to it without appearing flustered. The science behind this technique fascinates me. Your brain creates neural pathways through repetition, whether that repetition happens in reality or in your imagination. When you mentally rehearse confident behavior repeatedly, you're literally building the neural infrastructure for confidence. By the time you face the real situation, your brain has already practiced the successful response hundreds of times. I recommend practicing mental rehearsal in 3 phases. First, rehearse the ideal scenario where everything goes perfectly. See yourself confident, composed, and successful. Feel the satisfaction of a job well done. This creates a positive reference point for your subconscious mind. Second, rehearse potential challenges and your confident responses to them. This isn't about dwelling on problems, but about programming yourself to handle difficulties with grace and composure. When you've already solved problems in your mind, they lose their power to create anxiety. Third, rehearse the aftermath, the positive feelings, the congratulations, the sense of accomplishment. This creates motivation and reduces the fear of success. that sometimes sabotages people's efforts. I make mental rehearsal a daily practice, not just before important events. Every morning, I spend a few minutes visualizing myself moving through my day with confidence and purpose. This simple habit has transformed not just my public speaking, but every aspect of my interactions with others. The most powerful aspect of mental rehearsal is that it shifts your focus from what could go wrong to what will go right. Instead of your mind automatically generating worst-case scenarios, you train it to envision successful outcomes. This alone can dramatically reduce nervousness and increase your natural confidence. Asterisk. Picture a maestro standing before a magnificent orchestra, baton in hand, directing every instrument with precision and grace. Your body is that orchestra, and you can learn to conduct it with the same mastery, transforming nervous energy into confident presence through deliberate physical control. The physical symptoms of nervousness: the racing heart, sweating palms, trembling voice, and shallow breathing often feel completely beyond our control. But I've discovered that these responses can be managed and even redirected with the right techniques. Your body follows your breath, your posture influences your mindset, and your voice can be trained to project confidence even when your inner world feels chaotic. Let me start with the foundation: breathing. Most nervous people breathe from their chest, taking quick, shallow breaths that actually increase anxiety. I learned to breathe from my diaphragm instead, taking slow, deep breaths. That signals safety to my nervous system. Before any important interaction, I take 3 deliberate breaths, in 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, out for 6 counts. This simple technique has saved me from countless moments of panic. Your posture is equally powerful. I discovered that confidence isn't just a mental state, it's a physical one. When you stand tall with your shoulders back, your chest open, and your head held high, you're not just appearing confident to others, you're actually creating confidence within yourself. Your body chemistry changes when you adopt confident postures. The stress hormone cortisol decreases while testosterone increases, literally making you feel more powerful. I practice what I call power positioning before every important interaction. I find a private space and stand in a confident pose for 2 minutes. Feet shoulder width apart, hands on hips, chin slightly raised. It might feel silly at first, but the physiological changes are real and immediate. Voice control was perhaps my greatest challenge and my greatest victory. When I was nervous, my voice would become thin, high, and shaky, exactly the opposite of what I wanted to project. I learned to warm up my voice before speaking, humming low notes to access my deeper register. I practiced speaking from my chest rather than my throat, which gave my voice more resonance and authority. I also discovered the power of speaking slightly slower than felt natural. Nervousness makes us rush, but confident people take their time. When you deliberately slow your speech, you not only sound more confident, but you actually feel more in control. Pauses become your friend rather than your enemy. Physical anchoring became another crucial tool. I developed a simple ritual of pressing my thumb and forefinger together whenever I wanted to access a confident state. I practiced this gesture hundreds of times while feeling calm and confident, creating a physical trigger that could instantly shift my physiology. Now, whenever I feel nervousness rising, I can activate this anchor and feel my body respond with greater composure. Movement also plays a vital role. Instead of standing rigidly when nervous, I learned to move with purpose. Confident people use their entire body when they communicate. They gesture naturally, they shift their weight deliberately, and they use the space around them effectively. Movement channels nervous energy into dynamic presence. The key insight is this: you don't have to wait for confidence to feel confident in your body. You can create confidence through your body, and your mind will follow. **** In my study, I keep A jeweler's loupe, one of those powerful magnifying glasses that reveals the true nature of precious stones. This simple tool transformed my understanding of nervousness because it taught me that everything depends on how closely and from what angle you examine any situation. The same circumstance that terrifies one person can exhilarate another, and the difference lies entirely in the frame of reference. Reframing is perhaps the most powerful technique I've ever learned for eliminating nervousness. It's not about lying to yourself or pretending problems don't exist. It's about changing the lens through which you view challenging situations, transforming threats into opportunities and obstacles into advantages. I learned this lesson during one of my most embarrassing early presentations. I had prepared extensively, but when I stood up to speak, my mind went completely blank. Instead of catastrophizing about my failure, I suddenly saw the situation differently. Here was a room full of people who wanted me to succeed, not fail. They weren't my enemies waiting to judge me. They were allies hoping I would share something valuable with them. That shift in perspective changed everything. Instead of seeing the audience as predators and myself as prey, I began to see them as fellow human beings who were giving me the gift of their time and attention. My nervousness didn't disappear instantly, but it transformed from paralyzing fear into energizing excitement about the opportunity to serve. The reframe technique works because our emotional responses aren't actually triggered by events themselves, but by the meaning we assign to those events. A racing heart can mean I'm in danger, or it can mean I'm preparing for something important. Butterflies in your stomach can signal I'm about to fail or I'm about to do something that matters. The physical sensations are identical, only the interpretation changes. I began systematically reframing common nervous triggers. Instead of everyone is judging me, I learned to think people are interested in what I have to share. Instead of I might embarrass myself, I chose to think I have an opportunity to connect with others. Instead of I don't know enough, I reframed it as I know enough to be helpful, and I can learn more from this experience. One of my most powerful reframes involves mistakes and imperfections. Instead of viewing them as evidence of inadequacy, I learned to see them as proof of my humanity and authenticity. People don't connect with perfection, they connect with genuine human experiences, including struggles and vulnerabilities. I also reframed the concept of nervousness itself. Instead of seeing it as weakness or failure, I began to understand it as evidence that I was doing something that mattered to me. If I wasn't nervous, it probably meant the situation wasn't important enough to trigger my body's peak performance system. The most transformative reframe of all was shifting from self-focus to service focus, when I stopped asking how will I look and started asking how can I help. Nervousness lost most of its power over me. It's nearly impossible to be self-consciously nervous when you're genuinely focused on contributing value to others. Practice this technique by catching yourself in negative interpretations and consciously choosing more empowering perspectives. With time, positive reframing becomes automatic, and nervousness becomes a signal to look for the opportunity hidden within the challenge. Asterisk, asterisk, on my desk sits a golden ledger. Its pages filled with entries that represent something more valuable than money, records of every small victory, every moment of courage, every time I chose confidence over fear. This ledger represents what I call your confidence bank account, and understanding how to build it systematically is crucial to overcoming nervousness permanently. Most people make the mistake of waiting for big moments to build their confidence. They think they need to give a perfect presentation to hundreds of people or close a major deal before they can consider themselves confident. This backwards thinking keeps them trapped in nervousness because they never accumulate the small wins that create unshakable self-assurance. Confidence is built the same way fortunes are built, through regular deposits of small amounts over time. Every time you speak up in a meeting when you'd rather stay quiet, you make a deposit. Every time you maintain eye contact when your instinct is to look away, you add to your account. Every time you ask a question despite feeling uncertain, you increase your confidence balance. I learned this principle through personal necessity. After my early failures, I realized I couldn't wait for major successes to build my confidence. Instead, I began deliberately seeking small opportunities to practice confident behavior. I would force myself to ask one question at every meeting. I made myself shake hands firmly with every person I met. I practiced speaking clearly and slowly in casual conversations. Each small success built upon the previous one. The question I asked in Monday's meeting made it easier to contribute an idea on Wednesday. The firm handshake that felt forced last week became natural this week. These incremental victories created momentum that eventually carried me through much larger challenges. The key is to acknowledge and celebrate these small wins. Most people dismiss their minor successes as not counting because they weren't dramatic enough. This is a crucial error. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between small victories and large ones. It only recognizes that you succeeded when it mattered. I began keeping a daily record of my confidence-building moments. Each evening, I would write down 3 specific instances where I had acted confidently despite feeling nervous. This practice served 2 purposes. It helped me recognize progress I might have otherwise overlooked, and it reinforced the positive neural pathways associated with confident behavior. The compound effect of this approach is remarkable. After weeks of small deposits, you begin to notice that confident behavior feels more natural. After months, you start to see yourself as someone who handles challenges well. After years, unshakable confidence becomes part of your identity. I also learned to redefine what constitutes a win. It's not about perfect performance, it's about courageous action despite imperfect feelings. The shy person who asks one question deserves more credit than the naturally outgoing person who dominates the conversation. The nervous presenter who finishes their talk deserves more recognition than the experienced speaker who delivers flawlessly. Your confidence bank account grows every time you choose growth over comfort, courage over safety, and action over hesitation. Start making deposits today, no matter how small. The interest will compound faster than you imagine, and eventually, you'll find yourself drawing from a wealth of confidence that no single setback can bankrupt. Remember, confidence isn't built in the big moments, it's built in the small moments that prepare you for the big ones. Asterisk, asterisk. Above my fireplace hangs a painting of an elegant bridge spanning a deep chasm, and every time I look at it, I'm reminded of the most powerful antidote to nervousness I've ever discovered: genuine connection with other human beings. This bridge represents the magical transformation that occurs when you shift your focus from yourself to others, from your own fears to their needs and interests. The greatest revelation of my career came when I realized that nervousness is fundamentally a self-focused emotion. When you're nervous, you're completely absorbed in your own experience, how you look, how you sound, what others might think of you, what could go wrong. But the moment you become genuinely interested in someone else, self-consciousness begins to dissolve. I discovered this quite by accident during my early teaching days. I was preparing for a particularly challenging class, feeling my usual pre-presentation anxiety, when one of my students approached me with a personal problem. As I listened to his concerns and tried to help him find solutions, I completely forgot about my own nervousness. When I finally began teaching, I felt more relaxed and connected than I had in months. That experience taught me that authentic interest in others is the fastest route to confident interaction. When you're truly focused on understanding someone else's perspective, helping them solve a problem, or contributing to their success, there's simply no mental space left for self-conscious worry. This principle works in every social and professional situation. Before entering a networking event, instead of rehearsing what you'll say about yourself, prepare thoughtful questions you can ask others about their work, their challenges, and their goals. Before a difficult conversation with a colleague, focus on understanding their position rather than defending your own. Before a presentation, shift your attention from impressing the audience to serving their needs. I learned to approach every interaction with what I call generous curiosity. This means being genuinely interested in learning something from every person you meet, regardless of their position or background. The janitor might have insights about efficiency that the CEO lacks. The newest employee might see opportunities that veterans have overlooked. When you approach people with this mindset, conversations become explorations rather than performances. The magic happens when people feel truly heard and understood. When someone senses that you're genuinely interested in them as a person, not just trying to advance your own agenda, they naturally become more receptive and supportive. They want you to succeed because you've made them feel valued. I also discovered that sharing appropriate vulnerability creates deeper connections than projecting false perfection. When you admit you don't know something, ask for advice, or acknowledge a mistake, you give others permission to be human too. This mutual authenticity eliminates the pressure to maintain an impossible facade and allows real relationship to develop. The technique I call service focus has become central to my approach. Before any important interaction, I ask myself, how can I be helpful to these people? What value can I contribute? What problems can I help solve? This shift from self-concern to service naturally generates confidence, because it aligns your nervous energy with a worthy purpose. Building rapport through genuine interest isn't a manipulation technique. It's a recognition of our fundamental interconnectedness. When you truly see and appreciate others, they feel it, and they naturally respond with warmth and support. This creates an upward spiral where increased connection leads to decreased nervousness, which leads to better performance, which leads to even stronger connections. The beautiful paradox is that the less you focus on yourself, the more confident and attractive you become to others. Authentic connection isn't just an antidote to nervousness. It's the foundation of all meaningful success in life. Asterisk, asterisk, in my library stands a remarkable shield, not made of metal or leather, but crafted from wisdom gained through countless encounters with criticism and rejection. Each mark on this shield represents a lesson learned, a strength developed, and a step closer to the kind of confidence that cannot be shaken by others' opinions. The fear of criticism is perhaps the greatest source of nervousness in human interaction. Most people would rather remain silent than risk disapproval, would rather stay invisible than face potential rejection. But I learned something crucial early in my career. The people who accomplish anything worthwhile in life must develop immunity to criticism, not by avoiding it, but by learning to handle it constructively. My first major lesson came when a newspaper reviewer savagely criticized one of my early presentations. I was devastated, convinced that my career was over before it had truly begun. I spent days replaying his words, feeling humiliated and defeated. But then something remarkable happened. Other audience members from that same presentation began reaching out to tell me how much they had gained from my talk. I realized that one person's criticism didn't negate the value I had provided to many others. This experience taught me that criticism says as much about the critic as it does about you. Some criticism comes from genuine desire to help and should be welcomed. Other criticism stems from the critic's own insecurities, biases, or agenda, and should be viewed accordingly. Learning to distinguish between these types is essential for maintaining confidence while remaining open to growth. I developed what I call the criticism filter. When someone criticizes my work or ideas, I ask myself 3 questions. First, Is there any truth in this criticism that could help me improve? Second, is this person qualified and well-intentioned enough for their opinion to matter? Third, does this criticism align with feedback I've received from other sources? If the answer suggests the criticism has merit, I use it to grow. If not, I acknowledge it and move on without letting it shake my confidence. Rejection taught me equally valuable lessons. Early in my career, I was turned down for speaking opportunities, book deals, and business partnerships that I desperately wanted. Each rejection felt personal and devastating, but I began to notice something interesting. The rejections often had nothing to do with my qualifications or the quality of my work. Sometimes it was about timing, budget constraints, personal preferences, or factors completely outside my control. I learned to reframe rejection as redirection rather than reflection of my worth. When one door closed, it often forced me to find a better door that I wouldn't have discovered otherwise. Some of my greatest opportunities came as direct results of earlier rejections that pushed me in new directions. The key insight is that criticism and rejection are inevitable parts of any meaningful life. If you're never criticized, you're probably not doing anything significant enough to matter. If you're never rejected, you're probably not taking enough risks to grow. Instead of trying to avoid these experiences, I learned to expect them and prepare for them mentally. I also discovered the power of seeking criticism proactively. Instead of waiting for others to point out my flaws, I began asking for feedback regularly. This served two purposes. It helped me improve faster, and it desensitized me to criticism by making it routine rather than shocking. Building immunity to others' opinions doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive. It means developing such a strong sense of your own worth and purpose that external validation becomes nice to have rather than necessary to have. When your confidence comes from internal sources, your values, your growth, your contribution to others' criticism loses its power to devastate you. Remember, every person who has ever achieved anything worthwhile has faced criticism and rejection. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't the absence of negative feedback, is the ability to learn from it without being destroyed by it. Asterisk, asterisk, on my bookshelf sits a beautiful Japanese vase, deliberately cracked and repaired, with golden lacquer, a piece that exemplifies the art of kintsugi, where breaks are not hidden but highlighted as part of the object's history and beauty. This vase has taught me one of the most liberating lessons about confidence. Our imperfections and failures, when properly understood, become our greatest strengths. Perfectionism is one of the most insidious sources of nervousness because it sets an impossible standard that guarantees disappointment. I spent years trying to deliver flawless presentations, write perfect letters, and have conversations without any awkward moments. This pursuit of perfection didn't make me better, it made me paralyzed with fear of making mistakes. The breakthrough came when I realized that people don't connect with perfection, they connect with authenticity. When I shared a story about one of my failures during a presentation, the audience leaned in rather than turning away. When I admitted I didn't know the answer to a question, people respected my honesty rather than questioning my expertise. When I stumbled over words and laughed at myself, the room relaxed and became more engaged. Imperfection is not only acceptable, it's essential for genuine human connection. Perfect people are intimidating and unrelatable. They make others feel inadequate by comparison. But when you show your human side, when you acknowledge your struggles and mistakes, you give others permission to be human too. This creates an atmosphere of mutual acceptance that eliminates much of the nervousness that comes from trying to maintain an impossible facade. I learned to reframe mistakes as opportunities for connection rather than sources of shame. When I mispronounced a word during a speech, instead of pretending it didn't happen, I would acknowledge it with humor and move on. The audience appreciated my humanity, and the moment became memorable in a positive way. What could have been a confidence-skilling error became a confidence-building moment of authenticity. The Japanese concept of kintsugi teaches us that breakage and repair are part of an object's history, not something to disguise. Similarly, our mistakes, failures, and imperfections are part of our story, not flaws to hide. When we learn to speak openly about our struggles and how we've grown from them, these experiences become sources of wisdom and credibility rather than shame. I began deliberately sharing my imperfections in appropriate ways, not to appear weak or incompetent, but to demonstrate that success comes through persistence despite setbacks, not through the absence of challenges. When students heard about my early failures and how I overcame them, they gained hope for their own journeys rather than feeling discouraged by unattainable standards. This shift from perfectionism to authenticity transformed not just how I interacted with others, but how I viewed myself. Instead of being my harshest critic, I became my own compassionate coach. Instead of demanding perfection, I began celebrating progress. Instead of hiding my weaknesses, I started working on them openly. The courage to be imperfect is really the courage to be human. When you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be genuine, nervousness naturally decreases because you're no longer carrying the impossible burden of maintaining a flawless image. You can focus on contributing value rather than projecting perfection, on connecting with others rather than impressing them. Embrace your cracks. They're not signs of weakness, but evidence of your humanity. And when filled with the gold of wisdom, gained through experience, they become the most beautiful parts of who you are. Asterisk, asterisk, standing tall on the coastline near my home is a magnificent lighthouse, its powerful beam cutting through the darkness with purpose and precision. This lighthouse has become my symbol for understanding one of the most crucial aspects of confidence: learning to direct your energy deliberately, rather than letting it scatter in all directions through worry and nervousness. Most people misunderstand nervous energy completely. They see it as their enemy, something to be eliminated or suppressed. But I've discovered that nervous energy is actually raw power waiting to be directed. The same physiological arousal that creates anxiety can create dynamic presence and compelling communication when properly channeled. The difference between anxiety and excitement is remarkably small from a biological standpoint. Your heart rate increases, your breathing quickens, your muscles tense, and your mind becomes hyper-alert in both states. The distinction lies not in what your body is doing, but in how you interpret and direct these responses. I learned this lesson during one of my most challenging presentations early in my career. I was so nervous beforehand that I was physically shaking. But instead of trying to calm down completely, I decided to harness that energy. I began pacing backstage, using my nervousness to fuel my passion for the message I wanted to share. When I took the stage, that nervous energy transformed into dynamic enthusiasm that captivated the audience. Energy management begins with understanding your personal energy patterns. I discovered that I have natural rhythms throughout the day when I feel more or less energetic. By scheduling important conversations and presentations during my peak energy times, I set myself up for success rather than fighting against my natural cycles. I also learned to distinguish between different types of energy drains. Some activities energize me, like connecting with people who share my passion for human development, while others deplete me, such as administrative tasks or negative conversations. By maximizing energizing activities and minimizing draining ones, especially before important interactions, I maintain higher baseline confidence. Physical energy directly impacts mental and emotional energy. When I'm well rested, properly nourished, and physically active, I naturally feel more confident and capable. Conversely, when I'm tired, hungry, or sedentary, even small challenges can feel overwhelming. I learned to treat my physical energy as a precious resource that requires careful management. The practice of energy redirection became one of my most powerful tools. When I feel nervous energy building, instead of wishing it would go away, I ask myself, how can I channel this energy productively? Sometimes I use it to fuel more thorough preparation. Other times I direct it into enthusiastic delivery. Always, I frame it as power rather than weakness. Breathing techniques play a crucial role in energy management. When nervous energy makes me feel scattered, I use specific breathing patterns to recenter myself. The 4-7-8 technique, inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 7, exhaling for 8, naturally calms the nervous system while maintaining alertness. I also discovered the importance of energy boundaries. Confident people protect their energy from unnecessary drains. They say no to requests that don't align with their priorities. They limit exposure to negative people and situations. They create environments that support their energy rather than depleting it. The lighthouse metaphor reminds me that confident energy should be both powerful and focused. Like that beacon cutting through the darkness, your energy should have clear direction and purpose. When you learn to gather your scattered nervous energy and direct it toward your goals and values, you transform anxiety into advantage and nervousness into natural magnetism. Asterisk, asterisk, in my workshop, I keep the worn chisel of a master sculptor who spent 40 years carving magnificent statues from raw marble. Each tiny chip he removed seemed insignificant, yet collectively these small actions created works of breathtaking beauty. This chisel reminds me daily that confidence, like sculpture, is not created through dramatic gestures but through countless small, deliberate actions repeated consistently over time. The compound effect is perhaps the most underestimated force in personal development. Most people expect dramatic transformations from intensive efforts, but lasting confidence is built through modest daily practices that seem almost insignificant in isolation. The power lies not in the magnitude of individual actions, but in their consistency and accumulation over time. When I began my journey toward confidence, I made the mistake of trying to change everything at once. I would have periods of intense effort, followed by inevitable burnout and regression. It wasn't until I learned to focus on small, sustainable daily practices that I began to see real transformation. My daily confidence routine evolved gradually, but its core elements have remained consistent for decades. Each morning, I spend 5 minutes in what I call confidence preparation, reviewing my goals, visualizing successful interactions, and mentally rehearsing key conversations. This isn't dramatic or time-consuming, but it programs my mind for confident behavior throughout the day. I also established what I call courage moments, daily opportunities to practice confidence in low-stakes situations. I might initiate a conversation with a stranger, ask a question in a meeting, or offer a genuine compliment to someone. These small acts of courage seem trivial individually, but they build the neural pathways of confident behavior. The tracking element became crucial to my success. I began keeping a simple daily log of my confidence-building actions. Nothing elaborate, brief notes about moments when I chose courage over comfort, connection over isolation, or growth over safety. This record served 2 purposes. It made me more aware of opportunities to practice confidence, and it provided undeniable evidence of my progress. The remarkable thing about daily practice is how it transforms your identity gradually. At first, confident actions feel forced and unnatural. You're acting confident while feeling nervous. But through repetition, these behaviors become more automatic. Eventually, you begin to see yourself as someone who handles challenges well, speaks up when it matters, and connects easily with others. I learned that consistency matters more than intensity. Practicing confidence for 10 minutes every day produces better results than practicing intensively for 2 hours once a week. The daily repetition creates lasting change at the neurological level, literally rewiring your brain for more confident responses. The compound effect also applies to how others perceive you. Small, consistent displays of confidence accumulate in people's minds over time. Colleagues begin to see you as reliable and capable. Friends start viewing you as someone they can count on for wisdom and support. These changing perceptions create a positive feedback loop that reinforces your growing confidence. Setbacks become less devastating when you have a daily practice because you know recovery is just a matter of returning to your routine. Instead of viewing mistakes as evidence that you're not cut out for confidence, you see them as temporary deviations from your steady upward trajectory. The sculptor's chisel reminds me that masterpieces are created one careful strike at a time. Your confidence masterpiece is being created the same way, through daily practices that seem small but compound into something magnificent over time. Start today with something simple. Commit to it completely and trust the process. The compound effect never fails those who consistently apply it. Asterisk, asterisk, I have a vivid memory of attending a grand ballroom event early in my career, standing frozen just inside the entrance as elegantly dressed people moved effortlessly through the crowd, engaging in animated conversations, while I felt like an awkward outsider looking in. That ballroom became my laboratory for understanding social confidence, and the lessons I learned there have helped thousands of people transform their approach to social interactions. Social situations present unique challenges because they're unpredictable and involve multiple people with different personalities, agendas, and energy levels. Unlike presentations or meetings with clear structures, social gatherings can feel chaotic and overwhelming, especially for people who already struggle with nervousness. The first breakthrough came when I realized that most people at social events feel somewhat uncomfortable too. The person who appears supremely confident chatting by the bar might be just as nervous as you are. They've simply learned to act confidently despite their internal experience. This realization immediately reduced my sense of isolation and inadequacy. I developed what I call the strategic entry approach for social gatherings. Instead of diving into the deep end by trying to join large groups or approach the most intimidating people, I learned to start small and build momentum. I would look for someone standing alone or a small group with open body language that suggested they'd welcome another person. My conversation strategy evolved from trying to impress people to genuinely connecting with them. I prepared a mental list of thoughtful questions that would get people talking about subjects they enjoyed, their work, their interests, their experiences. People love to talk about themselves when they feel someone is genuinely interested in listening. The art of graceful entry became one of my most valuable skills. Instead of awkwardly interrupting conversations, I learned to position myself near groups and wait for natural pause points. I would listen first to understand the topic, then contribute something relevant. Most groups appreciate fresh perspectives when they're offered respectfully. I also mastered the skill of moving through a room with purpose. Instead of wandering aimlessly or clustering in one corner, I learned to circulate deliberately. I would set small goals for myself, meet 3 new people, have one meaningful conversation, or learn something interesting from someone in a different field. Body language plays an enormous role in social confidence. I trained myself to maintain open posture, make appropriate eye contact, and use gestures that suggested engagement rather than defensiveness. These physical changes not only made me appear more confident to others, but actually helped me feel more confident internally. The concept of social value transformed my approach entirely. Instead of focusing on what I could get from networking connections, opportunities, benefits, I began concentrating on what I could give: encouragement, information, introductions to other people, or simply the gift of genuine interest in someone's story, I learned to handle the inevitable awkward moments with grace rather than panic. When conversations died or I said something that fell flat, instead of mentally catastrophizing, I developed recovery strategies, asking a follow-up question, gracefully excusing myself to get refreshments, or simply acknowledging the awkwardness. With humor, the follow-up became as important as the initial interaction. I started carrying business cards and actually using them. But more importantly, I began following up with people I'd genuinely connected with. A brief email mentioning something specific from our conversation often led to lasting professional relationships and friendships. Perhaps most importantly, I learned to view social events as opportunities to practice confidence rather than tests to pass or fail. Each gathering became a chance to experiment with new conversation techniques, to push my comfort zone slightly, and to build evidence of my growing social competence. The ballroom that once intimidated me became a symbol of possibility, a place where anyone can learn to move with grace and confidence through the complex dance of human interaction. Asterisk, asterisk, on my desk sits a golden compass that once belonged to a ship's captain, who navigated treacherous waters for 40 years without losing a single vessel. This compass represents the kind of steady leadership presence that guides others through uncertain territory, and it reminds me daily that professional confidence isn't about having all the answers, it's about maintaining direction and composure when others are looking to you for guidance. The transition from personal confidence to professional leadership presence requires a fundamental shift in perspective. It's no longer just about managing your own nervousness. It's about projecting the kind of calm assurance that helps others feel secure and motivated, even when you're facing challenges you've never encountered before. I learned this lesson during my first major leadership role, when I was asked to manage a team of people who were older and more experienced than I was. My initial instinct was to prove my worth by demonstrating how much I knew, but this approach backfired spectacularly. The more I tried to impress them with my knowledge, the more they questioned my judgment and capability. The breakthrough came when I realized that leadership presence isn't about being the smartest person in the room, it's about being the most centered one. Leaders who inspire confidence don't necessarily have superior technical skills. They have superior emotional regulation and the ability to think clearly under pressure. I developed what I call the compass leadership approach. Like a ship's captain, I learned to focus on maintaining steady direction rather than reacting to every wave that rocked the boat. When team members brought me problems, instead of panicking or immediately offering solutions, I learned to pause, listen fully, and respond thoughtfully. This composed approach naturally inspired confidence in others. Difficult conversations became opportunities to demonstrate leadership presence rather than tests to survive. Instead of avoiding conflict or becoming defensive when challenged, I learned to lean into these moments with curiosity and openness. When someone disagreed with my decision, I would thank them for their perspective and explore their concerns genuinely before explaining my reasoning. The concept of authentic authority transformed how I approach professional interactions. I stopped trying to project an image of having everything figured out and began demonstrating the qualities that actually inspire trust: honesty about what I didn't know, willingness to learn from others, and consistency between my values and actions. I discovered that admitting uncertainty, when done skillfully, actually increases rather than decreases your credibility. When I said, "I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out and get back to you," people respected my honesty. When I asked team members for their expertise in areas where they knew more than I did, they felt valued and became more invested in our collective success. Meeting leadership became a crucial skill. I learned to facilitate discussions rather than dominate them, to draw out quiet voices rather than allowing loudest opinions to prevail, and to summarize and synthesize different viewpoints into clear action plans, the confidence to guide a room full of people toward productive outcomes while managing different personalities and agendas is a specific skill that requires practice. Presentation skills evolved beyond just public speaking to encompass executive presence. I learned to command attention not through volume or dramatics, but through the quiet confidence that comes from thorough preparation combined with genuine passion for the subject matter. I developed the ability to read rooms, adjust my communication style to different audiences, and handle challenging questions with grace. The ripple effect of leadership confidence extends far beyond your immediate team. When you project calm, competence, it creates a stabilizing influence that spreads throughout the organization. People begin to see you as someone they can rely on during uncertain times. And this reputation opens doors and creates opportunities that weren't previously available. Most importantly, I learned that leadership presence is ultimately about service, rather than status. When your confidence comes from a genuine desire to help others succeed and contribute to something meaningful, it becomes unshakable because it's rooted in purpose rather than ego. The compass reminds me that true leadership presence means staying oriented toward your values and objectives, regardless of external turbulence, providing the steady guidance that others need to navigate their own professional challenges with confidence. Asterisk, in my private study, I keep an elaborate mahogany box filled with the refined tools of a master craftsman, instruments so precise and sophisticated that they can only be wielded by someone who has mastered the fundamentals. These advanced confidence techniques represent the culmination of decades of research and practice, methods that transform not just how you handle challenging situations, but how you think about challenge itself. Advanced confidence work begins with understanding the concept of anti-fragility, the ability to not just withstand pressure, but to actually grow stronger from it. Most people aim for resilience, the capacity to bounce back from setbacks. But I've discovered that the highest level of confidence comes from developing systems that improve under stress, rather than merely surviving it. The technique I call stress inoculation involves deliberately exposing yourself to manageable doses of challenging situations to build immunity to larger pressures. Just as vaccines work by introducing weakened versions of diseases to strengthen your immune system, you can strengthen your confidence by gradually increasing the difficulty of situations you put yourself in. I began practicing this by seeking out speaking opportunities that were slightly outside my comfort zone. If I was comfortable speaking to groups of 50, I would look for opportunities to address 100. If I was confident with friendly audiences, I would seek out more skeptical ones. Each successful navigation of increased challenge expanded my confidence threshold permanently. Advanced visualization goes far beyond basic mental rehearsal. I learned to create what I call confidence anchoring, linking powerful emotional states to specific physical triggers that can be activated instantly in challenging moments. During peak confidence experiences, I would perform a specific gesture or touch a particular object, creating a neurological connection between the action and the feeling. The practice of reverse engineering confidence became one of my most powerful tools. Instead of trying to feel confident and then act confidently, I learned to identify the specific behaviors, postures, and communication patterns of genuinely confident people and practice them until they became automatic. Confidence became a set of learnable skills rather than a mysterious internal state. I developed sophisticated reframing techniques that go beyond simple positive thinking. The multiple perspective protocol involves deliberately viewing challenging situations from at least 5 different angles. How would a mentor see this? How would someone who loves me view it? How will this matter in 5 years? What opportunities might this create? What would I tell a friend facing the same situation? Advanced energy management includes what I call confidence state stacking the practice of layering multiple confidence-building activities to create peak performance states. Before crucial interactions, I might combine power, posturing, confidence, visualization, energy breathing, and positive self-talk in a specific sequence that reliably produces optimal mental and emotional states. The concept of failure immunity represents perhaps the most advanced confidence skill. This involves reframing your relationship with failure so completely that setbacks become fuel for greater confidence rather than sources of doubt. I learned to view every failure as valuable data that brought me closer to success, making each setback paradoxically increase my certainty about eventual triumph. Micro-recovery techniques became essential for maintaining confidence during extended, challenging periods. These are split-second methods for regaining composure when you feel confidence slipping: the 3-breath reset, the posture adjustment, the internal affirmation, or the refocusing question. These tools prevent small moments of doubt from cascading into larger confidence crises. I also mastered what I call confident improvisation, the ability to maintain composure and effectiveness when plans change unexpectedly. This skill involves developing such deep trust in your fundamental capabilities that you can adapt fluidly to new circumstances without losing your center. The practice of confidence contagion involves consciously using your own confident energy to elevate others around you. When you master this skill, your presence becomes a stabilizing and inspiring force that makes everyone in your vicinity perform better, creating an upward spiral of collective confidence. These advanced techniques require consistent practice and should only be attempted after mastering the fundamentals. But for those willing to put in the work, they represent the difference between basic confidence and the kind of unshakable presence that transforms not just your own life, but the lives of everyone you encounter. Asterisk, asterisk, from my office window, I can see a vast horizon where the earth meets the sky in an endless line of possibility. This view has become my daily reminder that confidence isn't just a personal achievement, it's the foundation for a life of unlimited potential and meaningful contribution to the world around you. As we reach the end of our journey together, I want you to understand that everything I've shared isn't just theory or technique. It's a blueprint for transformation that has been tested by thousands of people across decades of application. The principles you've learned will serve you not just in the specific situations where you've felt nervous, but in every area of your life where growth and contribution matter. Your confident future begins with integration. Take the techniques that resonated most strongly with you and weave them into a personal system that fits your unique circumstances and personality. Some of you will find power in the preparation methods, others in the reframing techniques, still others in the daily practice routines. The key is consistency of application rather than perfection of method. I envision you walking into situations that once terrified you with a quiet sense of capability and purpose. Not because you've eliminated nervousness entirely, that's neither possible nor desirable, but because you've learned to channel that energy into dynamic presence and authentic connection. You'll find yourself speaking up when it matters, taking on challenges that stretch your abilities, and forming relationships based on genuine interest rather than fear of judgment. The ripple effects of your growing confidence will extend far beyond your personal comfort zone as you become more willing to share your ideas. Your unique perspective will contribute to solutions and innovations that might never have emerged otherwise. As you become more skilled at connecting with others, you'll inspire courage in people who are still struggling with the fears you've overcome. I see you becoming a source of stability and encouragement for others who are beginning their own confidence journeys. Your willingness to be vulnerable about your growth process will give them permission to be honest about their struggles. Your example of persistent practice despite setbacks will show them that transformation is possible for anyone willing to do the work. Your professional life will flourish as colleagues and supervisors recognize your growing leadership capacity. Opportunities will come to you, not because you're aggressively pursuing them, but because you've developed the kind of presence that naturally attracts responsibility and recognition. You'll find yourself trusted with important projects, invited into significant conversations, and sought out for your perspective on crucial decisions. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself will transform. The internal critic that once held you back will become a wise coach that helps you grow. The fear that once paralyzed you will become excitement about possibilities ahead. The nervous energy that once felt like weakness will become fuel for achievement and service. The horizon I see from my window reminds me that confidence is not a destination but a way of traveling. Each challenge you face with courage, each connection you make with authenticity, each contribution you offer with conviction adds to the legacy you're building. You're not just overcoming nervousness. You're becoming the kind of person who helps others believe in their own potential. Your confident future is not something that will happen to you, it's something you're creating through every choice to act with courage despite uncertainty, to connect with others despite vulnerability, and to contribute your gifts despite imperfection. The nervous person who began reading this has already started to fade, replaced by someone who understands that confidence is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Step forward into that horizon with the knowledge that you carry within you everything needed to live boldly and contribute meaningfully. Your confident future begins now.